Welcome to the Gruber Morning Show. This is the special Tesla Roadster edition. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back for those of you who may be joining us from our prior podcast.
And what's behind us there looks like an alien face is actually a NACS socket on a Tesla Roadster. And honestly, we had no idea that there would be this much interest in that conversion.
No.
So we decided to run with it again in this podcast and give you some additional information, how it's progressing. Again, the whole point here is the Tesla Roadster charge plug and socket was created before there were any standards. And I'm not sure where Tesla got the design idea from, but it is bulky, it's heavy, and obsolete. That's the biggest problem. So when we need to repair the traditional charge cables for the Roadster, we scramble. We reverse engineer. We try to rebuild, rather than just simply pull them off the shelf and put a new plug on the end of that. Although we are exploring with the original manufacturer now, the replacing of those plugs and sockets and pigtails, we are also looking at this NACS conversion with the same vendor, and it looks like that's going to gain momentum as well. So again, we have some things to report in this podcast about our progress. We'll get into that here shortly. The previous podcast we just did was the General EV podcast, and we had an author. I got to make sure that I get the image correct here. Richard Flengy, who was the co-host of a podcast called EVTV that was run by
Jack Rickard.
Jack Rickard, exactly. Jack was one of the godfathers in the EV world. He was active and around in social media before we were even interested in it. So it was fun reminiscing with Richard Flengy, his days with Jack. Jack passed about 3 years ago or so, sadly, and at age 65, fairly young, but he left a legacy. And it's a podcast worth watching, getting Richard's stories and the basis for this book, Verities of an Electric Mule, which, by the way, you can buy on Amazon or on Richard's website, which is...
it's richardflengy.com.
.com.
And it's going to be FLENTGE for the last name.
So the Tesla Roadster podcast, I was thinking about that this morning. A number of times each week, we receive feedback from Roadster customers, owners who watch these podcasts. Many more than we anticipate because not that many of them chime in during the podcast. But where the majority of viewing takes place is after they've been aired, and it makes sense. Who's got time at 11 o'clock in the morning in the middle of the day to sit and watch an hour podcast on Tesla Roadster? So they tell us typically how much value they get out of these. And there's a strong community out there that is focused on the preservation of these iconic cars. So I guess I want to go on record thanking everyone for your participation and your interest. The Tesla Roadster, first generation, is definitely here to stay. Tesla feels that way. We feel that way. And the owner should be proud of owning a car like this that's going to make history.
Well, and I would think that, I think we've played a small part in that history, being able to pull together the Tesla Roadster community in this way. Having the facility to be able to do the repairs, and now being able to do things like this connector, that's taken off like a rocket. I've been so surprised to hear the level of interest that people have had, but maybe I shouldn't be.
The toughest part is finding the original vendors, and this one took us a few years actually to nail down. We've got our first image to pop up here, Jesse. It's called Garrison. What we like to do is pop up the images over the last week that the owners are proud of their cars, or in this particular case, Garrison Jason Blanton, who's a member of the Tesla Roadster Owners Group, put up a picture of his Roadster next to a Cybertruck. And this Roadster has an interesting addition to it. It is a Thunder Gray Roadster, and it's got a yellow stripe on it. As soon as Jesse pops it up here,
Yeah,
we'll get to see. There we go.
nice yellow racing stripe there. I like that. That's a nice touch.
You know, my 2008 ACR Viper had a red stripe in that same location, but they ran it all the way to the back of the car, even through the steering wheel. So my steering wheel had a red portion of leather.
Did not realize that.
Pretty cool concept. Yep. So this is Garrison Blanton's car, and then we've got another one that chimed in. Let's bring up Stephen Shao. It's the image is called Shao, Shao, and he's also showing a Radiant Red Roadster with a Cybertruck. Probably one of the there we go. I'm not sure where this is located, but we wanted to give a shout out to Stephen, and thanks for posting these pictures on that Facebook site.
You know, great picture, and I'm wondering if he owns that Cybertruck, because that looks an awful lot like a garage rail in the background.
Good point.
A garage door rail.
Entirely possible. Love to hear from you, Stephen. Maybe next time we'll have an update for the audience. Tim Valkeniers is in Belgium, and he has been working on, and I think I've got a picture here to post with his car as well. Let's see, maybe not. All right. Well, yes, It's called Brilliant Yellow. There we go. On these Facebook sites, oftentimes people report roadsters for sale. And, it's not always the traditional channels. This particular one is in Europe. It does not tell us here which auction site this is on, but it looks like this is being sold for 50,000 euros. So if this was a functioning roadster, that would be a heck of a deal, actually.
Yeah, it would be.
But it turns out that it does not run. So my question on the Roadster owners group on Facebook was, assuming bricked, we're hearing that ESS pack replacements in Europe are running around $50,000 US. The brick timelines are critical, and there are roadster magicians in Europe able to recover roadsters. Does anyone know the date and time of death? And the response from Christian Carol Lassen was, it died about 4 years ago. So my advice to the owners or the new owner is, this is not a recovery candidate. If it's been dead for 4 years and the service plug was not pulled, it's dead.
Yeah, it's terminally gone.
Dead. Yeah.
It's gone.
So it's going to need either a refurbished pack replacement, and it turns out that somebody in Europe chimed up and said, I may have just the thing for this car. As $50,000 is a lot of money.
Yes.
So it turns out this is a rare, brilliant yellow color. There weren't that many of those made, and if those of you watching know the actual production run on brilliant yellow roadsters, we would love to hear. Tim also says that he talked with the owner, and normally the car will go to Denmark. Well, there is a service organization in Denmark, non-Tesla, that normally does battery recoveries. Not sure about 4 years, though. And then Marco Nolte from Germany, he chimed in and he said, if anyone buying this car needs sheets, we have some sets of spare sheets from cars where our aftermarket pack got, or that they replaced with their aftermarket pack. Marco, by the way, has been working feverishly on a solution to a new Tesla Roadster battery pack. And he's making progress, but apparently he's not still quite there.
No, but it sounds like some of these sheets might be from some of those pack enclosures that he has. So that a very generous offer from him to be able to have those available.
He said the CAC on the sheets that he has is 120, which isn't stellar, but it's still functional. I mean, we've got a lot of Roadsters that come in that have, around 120-ish or sometimes lower. In fact, one I'm driving right now is 104 and charges up to 130 miles or so, 128 to 130. But it's not declining,
Yeah, it's a stable pack.
You're going to need 11 sheets, though, because I can't imagine after 4 years that any of the 11 in this car are going to be good. So if Marco has 11 sheets, there's a solution there, and someone in Germany may end up buying this. All right. By the way, the story on Tim, who posted this, Tim Valconeers, he also bought a Thunder Gray Tesla Roadster. It was hard bricked, and he's been selling some of the parts that come out of it now because he's going to convert this back to a Lotus, to an ICE car.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. He's in Belgium, and I'm not sure that that's ever been done. We've had customers, or I should say owners, that have hinted that they wanted to do that, but I'm not sure of any successful retro conversions back to a Lotus Elise.
Well, and he's going to have some unique challenges because we've talked about before. The Roadster is a little bit wider and a little bit longer than the Lotus Elise. And there were enough differences in the construction of the Roadster that it had to get re-registered for roadworthiness by the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. And so those frame differences doesn't take much to throw everything completely off.
Yeah. So Tim is actually highly skilled in Lotus repairs, and apparently he thinks that this is going to be a fairly not a simple project, but I forget what his exact description was. It was something that he felt that he's going to tackle and that he's pretty confident he's going to be able to pull off. So we'll have to keep an eye on that and see if we actually end up with a Roadster Elise combination.
That's just, it's weird to think. We talk so much about conversions from ICE to EV. Here we're talking about a conversion from EV back to ICE.
Wouldn't that devalue the Roadster?
Well, as a collectible, it's kind of like I don't have an analogy. I was going to say it's kind of like taking a Ferrari but they were never converted to EV. Yeah, I'm not sure there's any precedent set for that.
I'm wondering if it's almost like taking, you've heard of people that will build these kit cars and, getting a 1955 Ford Thunderbird, but it's not really a 1955 Ford Thunderbird. It's a 2017 kit that makes a 1955 Ford Thunderbird chassis.
Right. So valuation questions, I don't know. I don't know what what that will do to it. Now, what Tim was doing for a while was he was selling the internals of this Roadster, and he sold the PEM, he sold the battery, and then he had some of the modules that he was selling. And I don't know if those are all gone yet, but if you guys are interested, you can contact Tim on the Tesla Roadster Owners Group on Facebook if he has anything left.
Well, and it's possible that the value of the parts of the Roadster are going to leave him in a position where he's cash flow positive going into this repair too, because a good battery and a good PEM add in things like a switch pack or a HVAC or a VDS. It's not too much of those major components until you have enough cash to pay for the Roadster.
Right. And by the way, Tim watches our podcasts. In fact, let me go to one of the other news items here. What he was saying is that he was watching our podcast number 28. And let me find it here. Here we go. And he says, I listened to the Gruber podcast now up to episode 28, and there is talked more times about the key fobs, the alarm door opening units from the Roadster. And he realizes that what we've been saying is that we're unable to find the key fob and the transponder or the transmitter receiver. But he thinks that that these are Lotus parts, and he's got some pictures. Can we throw that up, Jesse? I think I've got that in the image list here. Yeah, it's called FOB for fob. Of course, you knew that, right? If I spelled it, FOB. My wife she likes to talk in phrases like that around the granddaughters because there's certain things they're not supposed to hear.
Of course.
Yeah.
The fun part is when the granddaughters say, "Hey, Grandma, can I watch the SHOW?"
Right. Yeah. So in this picture here, he's showing the similarity, or almost identical, I guess, between the Tesla Roadster key fob, which is the upper portion, and that's a 1.5, it looks like. Oh, no, that's a 2.0. and the one down below, which is the Lotus equivalent. But what he's also showing there is the transmitters. And what he's saying is anyone aware whether this works? So my comment was, you may have solved the problem, Tim, if it works, that is. A couple of years ago, we contacted Lotus for the fob and transceiver because so many owners are having problems with theirs. You know, these things get wet. They sometimes a battery replacement no longer works. They physically break. The plastic breaks. Some people have talked about 3D printing the housing to restore that, but no one had yet found the original vendor for this key fob and transceiver combination. So we talked to Lotus, and the original plant manager, by the way, at Lotus, Matt Wendell, was there during the Tesla Roadster days, and he's still there. So he was very knowledgeable about a lot of this, and he said, you know what? We'll go on the production line. We'll see what we can find, and I think we've got a solution for you. Well, a couple weeks later, he came back and he said, you know what? Tesla decided to take over the fob and the transceiver purchase themselves. We were not involved, so we don't have a solution. Now, what Tim is showing here, though, is a Lotus fob assembly that looks very much or identical to the Tesla Roadster fob up above. So what I'm saying here is you may have found the solution, and if you have, please share this on the site or with us through email. We'll certainly share it on the podcast because so many Roadster owners are struggling with the key fob issue.
I'm wondering if we need to reach back out to Lotus and see if they have that style of key fob that we could get one of.
That's not a bad idea.
Put it into one of our test mules just to see, because the key to me is that connector up at the top. If that connector up at the top is compatible with the connector that's in the Roadster, then problem solved.
Yeah, good point. And you know, the key portion of that Tesla fob up above is actually detachable. So if you can, if the fob portion or the transmitter is defective on your Roadster and the Lotus portion works, it'd be interesting to see whether that metal portion of the key fob will then snap into the Lotus portion.
Oh, that would be also very interesting, yes.
Of course, you might even be able to peel off that little Tesla icon and replace the Lotus to make it convincing and realistic.
You know, I think we have I think Victor has made some of those icons and stickers for people because the Tesla logo just kind of comes off.
Right. He loves making carbon fiber stuff and decals, and that's right up his alley. All right. Have another image to pop up here, guys. This one is called Type 2, TYP2. And getting back to this high level of interest in the Tesla Roadster conversion to NACS, a couple of people began to talk about what about the Euro Type 2 conversion. And Evmix Nielsen actually piped up, and he showed his version that he makes in Denmark. He says, here are my Type 2 EU 63 amp AC single phase only conversion package. So I contacted Evmix yesterday, and I got a response from him today. And the question was, we have a lot of interest in this NACS conversion. If you're already making one of these in the Type 2, we'd certainly be interested in collaborating and adding this to the conversion package.
Oh, absolutely.
So I did not get the final response yet to see what kind of, how many of these he has, how he makes them, whether the pigtail is converted. With the NACS conversion, we sent off 2 versions of the existing Roadster proprietary socket with about a 4 to 5 foot pigtail for the 2.0 Roadsters, and about a 30-inch or 25-inch version for the 1.5 Roadster. And what they're doing is actually reverse engineering and planning on replicating so that it becomes a plug-and-play type product. Our goal is to allow the owners to actually do their own replacement with a video and some serious documentation for a do-it-yourself effort. And now this kind of conversion for your Roadster can be done at virtually anywhere in your backyard or at your favorite repair center, local repair center, or when you ship your cars to us to be rebuilt and refurbished. We will offer that as part of the conversion.
Great idea. And that means that that's actually not that difficult of a conversion to do if we're going to be able to put together the directions for our customers.
In the 1.5 version, there is a plug-in mil-spec plug on the end of the pigtail.
Yes.
It goes into the PEM. So really the only complexity is figuring out how to get into your charge port door and then take out the existing assembly and mount the new one. And again, the instructions we provide will make that fairly seamless. With the 2.0 Roadsters, you actually have to open up the PEM, take the cover off, and then tap into some of the mounting terminals inside the PEM. And that one could be a little bit more daunting for the average user because even though there's an interlock switch there when you lift the cover that kills the power of the high voltage, not everybody is going to be willing to dig inside their PEM to change some of that cabling.
Sure, and you never know the person who doesn't take a picture or document well what it is that they put together, and then they end up putting their wires back in the wrong sequence.
No, yeah, that would be tragedy. All right. So anyway, once we get more information from Michael, who actually is Ev Mix Nielsen, we'll report, and he's actually been on our podcast once at least that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm.
He was also, and maybe still is, working on a battery solution for the Tesla Roadster, which will, give an alternative to the $45,000 pack here in the U.S. or $50,000 pack in Europe.
It's going to happen. We have some comments that have come in this morning.
Okay.
3G Beast tells us, hey, thank you for joining the show.
Dennis Pascal, how are you? He's one of our customers, Roadster owner. He says, haven't had the annual done in a few years. We just get too nervous with the PEM work that happens during the annual. How often should we wait until the annual is done on a 1.5 Roadster? Well, there's some variables there, Dennis. How often do you drive the car, first of all? What kind of roads do you drive it on? We had one customer that lived on a dirt road, and he probably should have gotten an annual every quarter because in a 2.0 Roadster, you're sucking up a lot of debris from down below, depositing it on the heat sinks. One of the telltale signs that you'll see that you're due for a PM is when it gets warm again and if you're getting thermal limiting with your Roadster, indicating that you've got some clogging going on with the cooling systems. The Tesla service centers, the ones that are accepting Roadsters, generally have some talented people that still remember how to do annuals. So you're in California, I believe. I don't have our CRM open here, but what you might do is check with the service center and find out what kind of a seasoned technician they're going to have work on it. And if you hear, well, Jack is still here in the back and he's been working on Roadsters since 2014, you're probably in good hands.
Yeah, definitely agree with you there. Wayne Levitt also was in commenting about the yellow Roadster. He said, Google said 19 yellow ones were made and one crashed.
And one crashed, okay. So, yeah, they're fairly rare. I think the Lightning Green, which was only made 1 year, had 33 cars in that color. So this could be one of the really rare ones. And, of course, the most rare is going to be the Insane Green.
Oh, yes.
Only one in the United States.
Oh, yes. That Insane Green is something else to behold.
And it looks like we're getting some camera adjustments. So if it looks like we're bouncing a little bit, it's not your eyes or an earthquake at your location. What'd you guys think?
Or at our location.
Or in our location, yeah. I was going to say, what'd you guys think of that that eclipse yesterday? That was pretty cool. We didn't get the full impact.
We didn't. You know, my wife bought eclipse glasses for her first grade class.
Uh-huh.
And they were able to, just as they finished up recess, was the height of the eclipse here in Arizona. So she handed out glasses, and for the first time, I've been on a number of eclipses in my lifetime, and this is the first time I actually used the eclipse glasses to look right at the sun.
Really?
That
Okay.
was pretty cool.
Yeah. The first time I looked at it here, it looked like the Apple logo. It
It
had a little
did.
bite out of the
Yeah.
side, right? But yeah, it was a memorable experience. I guess the next one is in 20 years. And, it's, I plan on being there. I don't know about you, but
I plan on being there.
yeah.
It's, I think, what did they say? 2044? Yeah, 20 years.
Yep, 2044. We've got another image to pop up here. This again is a Tesla Roadster item. And let's see here. It's called Rodent Dash 1. This is something that we also covered in the last Roadster podcast, but we have an update. We're beginning to install these in Roadsters. And because they're so inexpensive, we had one customer that says, you know what? I don't just want one of these in my car. I want 3 of them. And what she was talking about was, see the Pattler rodent repellent for cars? This is a electronic device that creates an ultrasonic high-frequency sound to keep rodents out of the car. Rodents like raccoons, squirrels, marten, cats, or mouses. This has to be a Chinese. They always
It
get the
has to be
plurals of it.
Chinese.
Mice get scared and avoid the car. And apparently it will not be audible to humans, so it's not going to be annoying for you. It runs off 12 volts, and the good part about that is in an ICE engine car, if you hook something to the 12 volts and you're not running your car, you're draining your battery.
Yes.
With a Tesla Roadster, you constantly have DC to DC support to the 12-volt battery. So even if you're drawing from the battery, it's not going to kill your car or drain your battery. So we're
Very
putting
true.
3 of these in currently. And for those of you interested in purchasing something like this, there's a second picture here, image called Rodent-2. And this will show you where to get this on Amazon. And it'll also bring up the price here in a second. There we go.
It's I've seen these ultrasonic ones that you plug into your wall at your house and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And if you were listen really closely, you could hear a tick, 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 and it's the beginning and ending of the sound cycle. But that was all you could hear.
Really? Okay.
I'll be very interested to, once you guys have this installed, come and listen and see if we can hear anything at all.
Yeah. And once we have it installed, we'll bring it to the next podcast show then and actually show it in operation. And
Yeah.
maybe we'll even get a picture of the rodents scattering and leaving the area.
Well, I'm thinking what you need to do is get a 12-volt battery, and there's one area of the compound that has a mouse problem,
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
and see if it helps.
Actually, upstairs here too.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. Is
Yeah. Yeah, they were.
upstairs.
Yeah, they're eating the plants. There are a couple of philodendrons that apparently have lost all their leaves.
Yeah, and so they've set up home and put that up there and let it sit for a weekend.
Yeah.
See what happens.
So the description on this includes the rodent repellent for cars will stop rodents eating car wires and protect your property. Well, for 3 of them, $75 or so, it's cheap insurance for the cost of rodent damage in a Tesla Roadster. They were showing me this morning on a brilliant yellow Roadster, actually, in our service center, that there's certain portions that really aren't quite accessible. There's an AC line that apparently runs to the back, and it runs through some areas that you can't get to. There's a good 1.5 feet or so. Fortunately, that's not where the AC leak is, so we're okay there.
Well, that's
yeah.
good.
But if it was a wiring harness and you had rodents building nests inside these protected areas, then it gets a bit more expensive because we have to actually pull the old wiring out, fish new wiring through, and you get wiring harnesses that have to be repaired.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, there you have it. That is the rodent protection for the Tesla Roadster. And I don't know what happened, but within the last couple of years, we have seen a huge uptick in rodent damaged Tesla Roadsters. We even had a Model S the other day that had rodent damage.
Really?
Yeah, that one that we purchased, actually.
Yeah. I'm wondering if those rodents are watching our podcast and heard about the Chinese roadsters.
That's it. Yeah.
Um, so Dennis Pasquale has a couple more comments for us here. He asked first, he said, wasn't there a Model S that was converted to gasoline
There
that
is,
Reach
Dennis.
Rebuilds did?
Yes, exactly.
If I remember right, that's the one they took out the rear window and put an engine in the back of the Model S.
Uh-huh.
Or actually, that might be just that engine was a generator that produced electricity to put back into the Model S. I heard it was terrible. It was loud and
Yeah.
obnoxious and everything else.
I heard the goal was to put the engine in the front so that when you lift the hood, it looks like a traditional ICE car. And, my question, I didn't see it. I just saw a picture of the outside, but how did they recreate the transmission tunnel? Because remember, a Tesla Model S has a flat floorboard all the way across.
Oh,
So,
that's true. And that Model S does not have enough room to put a drivetrain without some sort of tunnel in that floorboard.
Right. Yeah. So Wayne Levitt says, my friend keeps asking me to fit a Dodge 460 V8 he has into my Model S. He likes the Tesla S, but really wants it with a V8. I used to restore cars with him, and he has a shed full of full of chargers. Okay.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that again, putting the engine in isn't the issue. I think it's putting that transmission in, and I guess bye-bye center console is what you have to say.
And the other part of this, I get it, because in order to match the performance of these types of cars, you're not going to be able to put a small block 8 into these cars.
No, not at all.
A big block 8, maybe even a V12 out of a Lamborghini, and you're starting to get closer to the performance of an EV.
Yes.
Not quite there, but closer.
Did you guys read these, or do we need to scroll?
No.
Will Tow right now.
Yeah.
It says, hey guys, what about the taillight LED rings compatibility with the Lotus? I've seen Greg Race Parts mod, but not much.
Yeah, Greg does a great job, by the way, of recreating some of these things. And I'm not sure what's available. Victor Atlasman from NXU. I never know. I want to put an X in there, but you can't, right?
It's just
From
new.
Yeah. He actually had us, or he was on our podcast a couple of weeks ago. Thanks for joining us, Victor. He says, hey, popping in to say hi. Thanks for all of the referrals, by the way. Yeah, appreciate it. And then Dennis says, only sunny weather in Southern California on good weather. Oh, that's when he drives it. It's my wife's car. Yeah, so I wouldn't fret too badly about, in SoCal, if you're staying on the nice highways, you're probably not going to push that annual need too greatly. He's thanking us for the advice. Thanks for joining us, by the way. Wayne Levitt says, I watched it live from NASA. Yes, the eclipse was cool.
Well, that's one reason that you need the really good sunglasses, guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then Wayne Levitt again says, thanks, guys, and good night. It's 2:30 a.m. here in Perth.
Thanks for joining us. Van Goatwagon joined us. So easy, he says, I could do it. All right. And then TikTok, Jason DeFoss, he says, hello, Pete, watching from Canada. Keep up the great info. Jason, I owe you a response to the taking pictures of underneath the car. Jason is working on safety issues with the vehicles that are involved in accidents.
Oh, okay.
And so great work that you do, Jason. And we'll get you that information. So we have another image here, and this one is soft top. Those of you that own Tesla Roadsters and you have a soft top, you're probably lucky if at this point in time you're not getting orange dust on you as you drive and you've got your soft top on. There is a, between the laminate of the soft portion of the top that's on the inside of the vehicle like we're showing here, there is a thin sponge material that with age decomposes, crumbles, hardens, and then eventually turns into dust. And it's a yellowish, tannish color, which is the reason for the gold dust inside a Roadster. These soft tops are quite repairable, and with a headliner replacement with a slightly thicker material and more sound deadening, it will not decompose and do what the sponge material did. And we've done a few of these so far, and they've worked out wonderfully. What happens here is the soft portion that you see there actually has two bonnets that are supports, and those clip in, and then the soft portion of the top sits on those, and then the sides clamp down.
Okay. It sounds like the material is very similar to what was common in cars back in the late 20 aughts and early 2010s. That soft top material. I did one on a Ford Taurus back in the day that we owned, and the top of the material was coming undone from the top, and it was exactly that same spongy material that you described.
It just dries and crumbles, basically. All right. So the way to get these fixed, you can send them to us. We'll restore them. We have an upholstery shop that is doing amazing work. They not only do the seats in Italian leather, but they do our hard tops and soft tops. And by the way, both of them suffer from different problems. The hard tops will eventually delaminate, and the black material actually sags and hits your head.
Okay.
The soft tops have the decomposing sponge, and you get the gold dust. But both of those are repairable, and I think we even have a price here for those. For $545, both for the soft top and the hard top, you can get that restored and get new headliner material on the hard top.
That's a cheap price, and I tell you what, on those hard tops, they wouldn't have to droop much to hit my head.
Right. All right. So getting back to the NACS conversion, and we talked about this at the last podcast, but the J1772 standard, which eventually replaced the traditional Roadster plug socket combination, was not yet available when they built the Roadster. By the time that the last Roadsters were built, it was. However, Tesla was not going to switch midstream, and they continued with the original plug and socket combination. If you have the charging methods that you would use with your Roadster, the Suntron wall charger, for example, which is a large unit, mostly for the 1.5s, doesn't work well with the 2.0s, or the Clipper Creek TS70 chargers. There's a picture we can throw up here, Jesse. It might give people a better visual. Let's see. No, I guess I don't have it. All right, Jesse, never mind. Unless you want to go into the last week's session and look at charge options. So the reason I'm talking about the wall chargers is you can convert the wall chargers to a NACS cable. So you don't have to throw that investment away, and then continue to use that with your Roadster or even your later model Teslas. It would require you sending the wall chargers to us, and we'll retrofit, and we'll put a NACS cable on the end of that, up to 25 feet, actually.
Well, and that's nice, especially with that Clipper Creek. You don't find very many 70-amp chargers that are out there in the marketplace. That's going to be a really robust charging solution. Those Clipper Creek chargers are just built like a tank. They're such a good quality.
They are indeed, yes. So the question continuously comes up, though, now that we've got a NACS socket, or will have a NACS socket on the Tesla Roadster, will it supercharge? No, it will not. There are two different charging methods in the NACS system. There's the DC fast charge and the AC charge. In a later model Tesla, there's a high voltage junction box underneath the rear seat that senses the incoming voltage and then switches contactors accordingly. If it's sensing supercharged DC input, it switches over directly to the battery for charging. If it senses AC, it switches to the chargers or charger that's underneath your rear seat to convert that AC to DC for the battery. The Roadster has none of this kind of technology. Now, you can get the JDEMO conversion, which Tony Williams at QC Charge has been selling for a few years now, and that will give you the ability to do supercharging. However, at this stage of the game, we're not certain that we're going to integrate both DC and AC charging into the NACS conversion that we're doing here, because in order to do that, it would require additional electronics and additional black box and some switching.
Well, it's going to require some sort of testing and make sure that the battery cooling system is up to the task as well, because the battery cooling system was never built for DC charging and the kind of heat it would put into that battery.
Correct, except for regen, which is a DC feed, but it's not 100% duty cycle.
Right.
All right, we've got another, we've got some questions here. Okay. Dennis Pascal says, good night, Wayne. I miss Perth. Enjoy Odessia restaurant at City Beach. So it looks like Dennis has been there. I have relatives there and I've never been there.
You've never been there?
No, my family's relatives, my mother's side, they were fleeing Russians after or during World War II.
Yes.
And they scattered all over the world because they wanted to get as far away from that carnage as possible.
Oh, sure.
And some of them went to Australia, Canada, U.S., and that's where I ended up. But yeah, so we have relatives all over the world. Not by choice, but by necessity at that point in time.
Boy, that's a good excuse to go to Australia sometime, though.
Right. So Andy Nickel from UK asked a question. He says, anyone UK or Europe based able to recommend a coolant replacement for the original propylene glycol or the Sierra type antifreeze that the Roadster demands and requires?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, there are 7.4 quarts of glycol in your Tesla Roadster in the battery cooling system. And it does not have an engine to cool, it has a battery to cool, and that's what they use that for. The recommended antifreeze to use is premixed Sierra antifreeze coolant, which is let me get back to here, it is a propylene glycol. Now, Peter Mildrexler, who I believe still is the service manager in Munich, Tesla Munich.
Okay.
Been with Tesla many years. In fact, a lot of the old timers know him. He says use only Sierra, as otherwise you can get problems with your aluminum cooling tubes. What he's talking about there is inside the ESS battery pack, each of the sheets have aluminum cooling tubes that touch every cell in that car, and those are thin aluminum. He said that if it's difficult to get in the UK, the Tesla service centers have it. Well, then Andy, checking with the Tesla service centers or looking at it in the parts list, said that it is not for sale. He couldn't order it. And then Peter responded and says, you don't have the right part number. Apparently Tesla at some point changed the part number. But he said, if you call your service center, they should be able to help you. And if you're still struggling, send me a private message and your VIN, and or he says, email it to me. Again, the community coming together in cases like this, even Tesla,
that is pretty cool.
Willing to help owners. And Peter's in Germany, and Andy's in UK, so even out of the country. What I found was there's nothing special about the cooling system. This is according to TMC. The battery cooling tubes are aluminum, as are the heater and AC heat exchanger. He says any propylene glycol antifreeze will work. Ethylene glycol, however, cools better, but it is toxic and does not fit the green theme, which is probably why Tesla recommends propylene glycol. Now, I'm not going to weigh in on whether this is true or not, but I can tell you this: you don't want to mix the two. And you would have to do a complete flush if the later version is able to be used, ethylene glycol. So you have to stay with what's already in the car, and that's the primary reason to stay with Sierra propylene glycol.
Yes, I know from rough experience, I ended up having to do an engine rebuild when I did something similar to that.
Oh, really?
And if you remember the black Chevy Trailblazer S10 that I had here when I was working early at my Gruber tenure, we took it to Gruber Motors in 2016, 2017, and that was the problem.
Okay.
I had mixed the two different types of
I
antifreeze,
do remember that.
and it turned into a gel inside my engine.
Okay.
And the only way that I knew it was my engine started to overheat and one of my hoses burst due to the high pressure.
Hmm.
And I had been told that it was okay, so I did it, and it was not okay.
One of my neighbors was inspired by my working on my own cars, especially my old Mopars,
Yeah.
right? The big block 8s. And finally, it came time for him. He needed an oil change. So he decided to do it himself, like I do.
Uh-huh.
Get a call from him after he had started a while, and he says, Pete, he says, I drained all the oil, put the plug back in, and now I'm trying to put oil in there, but it's already full of oil, and I haven't put any in yet.
Oh,
He
boy.
drained his transmission case.
Oh, no. Oh,
But that's a story on the coolant in the Tesla Roadster. And again, if anyone else in the community has some sources for the Sierra product, we have no problem getting it here in Phoenix, Arizona. And I
Yeah.
think they go to O'Reilly's and they deliver even.
yeah. I at one point with the Model S had a coolant leak, went to get coolant. AutoZone said, "What are you talking about? Teslas don't have radiators." I'm like, "Yeah, they do."
Right.
And I'm like, "Okay, you guys don't know what you're talking about." So I went down the street to O'Reilly's. They gave me the right stuff immediately.
Wayne Levitt says, "Cheers, Dennis. It's beautiful here, Perth, 29 centigrade daily." Okay,
Ooh, that's pretty nice.
this is their fall.
This is their fall, and 29 centigrade is going to be, it's probably somewhere around 95 degrees or so.
Mm-hmm.
Still, to us in Phoenix, that's beautiful weather.
It is.
A Highlander is joining us today. Hi, Highlander. He says, "Good day, all."
Dennis says, if you bought it early enough, there was the Roadster to NACS adapter that sold in 2011 to 2013. That was the Tesla version. And then Henry Sharp came along. And he began building the CAN Junior and the CAN Senior, which now
Yes.
made these adapters no longer a cable with two connectors on the end, but it was a single can, kind of like the size of a Coke can. And those are very popular. We still sell those. Henry still supplies us, and he's still making them. Of course, this NACS conversion is going to obsolete many of those adapters, so
Yes,
things will change.
I'm sure it's going to be a popular one. Finks Automotive is joining us today. Says, "Howdy, boys. This is my first opportunity to view the podcast live. Can't wait for my NACS conversion."
We can't either, and it's an exciting project. So this is the point in time when we usually begin plugging the European Tesla Takeover. Remember, that's May 24th and 25th. It's in Flachau, Germany, just outside of Salzburg, nestled in the middle of the Alps. And they're going to have 1,000 Teslas there and keynote speakers. It's going to be quite a event, workshops, live music. They've got to have, Bavarian bands there. That's the only
Oh,
kind
I'm
of
sure.
music. I can't imagine they. Well, I don't know.
Well, it's in Austria,
out.
but
Yeah.
they might have other similar stuff to that, but it's so close to Bavaria, you're going to have that as well.
So we'll bring the Tesla community together in Germany and or Austria. There are clubs coming from all over Europe, by the way, France, Portugal, all of Scandinavia, UK, of course, and Eastern Europe. So this is going to be a noteworthy event. The U.S. version really took off. They've had 3 of them so far. They actually had May Musk as a keynote speaker at their last one, and it's growing rapidly as the Tesla community continues to grow. So we're looking forward to supporting and participating with the European takeover. We're actually going to do a live podcast from there, and live meaning that I'll be on a Zoom call and these guys will be in the studio. And they'll be envious because I'll be there with the alpine
Well,
scenery.
of course, it's going to be 150 degrees here or something like that, and you're going to be chilling with a Hefeweizen and yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Sandy's not going to be there. I tried to get him to come, but he owes me a Hefeweizen, and I'm going to hold him to that. One of these days, we're going to get together and hoist some beers somewhere.
Definitely.
So in the news, Roadster news, here's something else that is beginning to percolate. There's a company in Texas called Resell, and these guys do repairs on the later model Teslas primarily. They have figured out how to do the cell repairs and isolation and module replacements. But Chad Maglakey, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, Chad. I called you this morning, and I was going to confirm that that pronunciation. We have invited him to come on the podcast next Tuesday because he has a story to tell about Tesla Roadster improvement and a new product. The backstory behind this project that they're working on at Resell. He says, we've been contacted for an initial batch of Tesla Roadster battery packs as part of a large partnership group working on developing a fully spec'd Roadster. He says, think Singer, Celine, AMG, Roof, with the tech in Seattle and Coachworks done in Austin. Drivetrain and suspension in SoCal, and work on the packs and HV bus by Resell. So there's a picture here that we can throw up, Jesse. The first one is Resell-1. And I should have brought a picture of the Tesla Roadster sheet. But you know what? He's got one standing side by side. It's a graphic picture, graphic art picture, but it'll show you the size difference. So apparently they have funding from an outside source that is developing a Tesla Roadster pack with a different architecture. First of all, it's no longer a sheet, trapezoidal looking sheet. It looks like this. And if we can bring, these are, by the way, 2170 cells, which is just over 5 amp hours compared to the traditional 18650 at 2.2 and the later improved cells at 3.2 amp hour. So that's another reason that they can pack more energy into a smaller space. The actual physical dimensions here, Jesse, is Resell-3, and you can see the size difference. That's 2, and that shows the housing. There's 3. So with this orientation or mounting, they're saying that the center of gravity in the Tesla Roadster will be even lower. It's already fairly low with a 1,000-pound pad in the middle of the car, which, of course, is going to improve handling a bit. But the best part about this is the weight savings. Apparently, they're going to, the design goal is around 400 pounds instead of the 1,000-pound pack.
Wow.
And that immediately translates into a performance improvement. They're saying we're confident this pack will do 0 to 60 in the low to mid 3s. Remember, the Roadster is 3.9 for the non-sport, 3.7 for sport.
Yes.
Well, you get into the lower mids and you're, 3.2 to 3.5.
Yes.
So the Roadster may just pin you back into seat even more than it can currently do. Another design goal is they are contemplating a city variant. To be clear, he says, we're somewhat wary of this. It would be roughly half the power output and torque of the original pack with around 80 to 90 miles of range. So we're going back into a basic commuter car then.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. But he says, in effect, probably the same specs as the Fiat 500e, so spirited, but significantly lower performance than the original favorite spec. But the advantage here, he says, it would at least keep your Roadster on the road. So in a sense, it's more of a rescue pack.
Right.
And for a budget-sensitive customer that doesn't have $45,000 to put in a car, where current valuation might be $70,000 to $90,000, this might be a welcome, temporary solution. And they're looking for inputs from owners. This is on the Facebook site, Tesla Roadster Owners Group site. You can see some of these claims that I've been reading to you on that site. So they said that some folks asked about the module orientation. The module is actually mounted on end at a 30-degree angle front to back, kind of like that picture there shows.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a cassette-style module versus the sheet-style module in the original Roadster. Substantially less volume and weight with a much lower center of gravity. Even more innovative, the compact size allows for hot swappable cassette-style pack that easily slides up and into the chassis. Now, there's something we've been intrigued with for a number of years, coming from the critical power world. 20 years ago, the component UPS manufacturers decided to go scalable.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that was, before that time, if you had a 150 kVA requirement, you would then buy that size, but then as you grew, you would have to replace your UPS.
Right.
And if you oversized, you got into efficiency problems.
Right.
So the manufacturers began to create scalable UPSs. The first one was APC with their Symetra, single-phase Symetra, which was a 16 kVA UPS with 4 kVA power modules. So you could start with 4, then go to 8, 12, and then 16. And the cool part was it was hot swappable, meaning that while your equipment is running and powering all your PCs, you could essentially walk up to this if you had redundancy, N+1 they called it.
Mm-hmm.
You could swap battery modules or you could swap power modules. If you had a defective one and you were at N+1, the spare power module kept it running and then gave you redundancy once you plugged back in.
Yeah, so you walk up to it, unplug the bad power module, plug in a good one,
Right.
and that's it. You're done.
Yeah. So although they talk about the scalability, that's going to be a cool feature, it's not going to be quite as convenient as this UPS where you could open the door and swap, because you still have to gain access to your battery pack housing,
Right.
which is behind the seat and in front of the drive motor and the PEM. But again, dropping a battery pack, you can do all the swaps that you want, unless you do what Todd Weirsom did, which is behind his seats, he carved out the firewall and put a plexiglass panel there. And with that arrangement, it's conceivable that you could swap your batteries.
Wow.
Now, Todd loves to show visuals of the inside of the car. And the reason he did this was he's got LEDs inside the pack that glow and blink, and the PEM cover, so that when he takes it to car shows, it's a huge draw.
Oh,
people
sure.
can see the electrons moving around, basically,
Sure.
But anyway, I had contacted Chad this morning, and we'll see if we can arrange a podcast interview, Zoom call, for the next Roadster podcast, and he can tell us a whole lot more about what they're developing. In all fairness to all the pioneers that have been working on the same sort of thing, a Tesla Roadster battery pack replacement, Marco Nolte, Ev Mix Nielsen, Chris Rosa, Jerry Gibson up in Seattle. There are a lot of people that have been trying to do this, and none of them have reached the level of scalability. Many of them have a prototype.
Yes.
But no one yet has a package that you can purchase off the shelf and insert in your car. I think Marco is probably the closest, because he actually developed a pack and he's driving around with it, but he still has some interface issues, which is typically where it breaks down, is in the integration of a different type of cell structure and architecture, because, the electronics in a Roadster are fairly finite, and they're not going to change much.
Well, exactly. And so getting, when the CAN bus gets different signals and foreign signals, being able to handle that through the software is going to be important.
Yep.
And there will be a lot of testing. I can imagine even when Marco, because I think he'll be one of these successful ones, when he's ready to sell his first packs, it's going to be a sale of a couple of packs, and those people are going to, frankly, kind of be guinea pigs, because they'll drive differently than he does.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that's the story on the new Tesla Roadster battery pack, the latest one. And of course, the good news is Tesla is still making the replacement pack.
Yes.
So we're not left high and dry. There was a period of time a few years ago in between the first failing Tesla Roadster battery pack, where there was a serious range decline, And Tesla did what any responsible manufacturer would do, was they stopped production until they figured out what was going on and what the problems were. During that 2 or 3 year span or so, Tesla Roadster prices nosedived badly because people weren't sure there was going to be a solution that would allow them to continue to drive their car.
Right.
That was a point in time when you could buy a functioning Tesla Roadster for $30,000 to $40,000 on eBay.
Yeah, and if you were buying one that was with a bad battery or some other drivability issue, $15,000 maybe,
Mm-hmm.
and not anymore.
Mm-hmm. So TikTok, Jason DeFoss reminds us, Mopar or no car, LOL. That was the slogan if you were a Mopar faithful.
That's right. And Dennis Pasquale says, he was talking about the charge adapter. He says, I meant the yellow cord to connect to the TS70 for the Roadster to NACS.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, that all that technology is going to change if this NACS project begins to gain or to grow some legs. And the interesting thing is going to be unanswered yet, although Tesla's interested. Will we get Tesla to participate in this conversion? Because now the service centers are able to do the upgrades.
Yeah, that's. I still. I know now there is interest. Once this has been done and demonstrated to work, we're going to see a lot of calls and stuff come in, I think, immediately.
And it's the same vendor that originally made their pigtails. So that, I think, is the other clinching factor possibly for this.
I think so as well.
No promises, but we're working on it. PPF removal. Got to remind people all the time. There was a poor guy up in Seattle, Matt Lacrosse. He spent 4 days removing PPF from a Twilight Blue Roadster. Get your PPF replaced every 8 to 10 years. If it's out in the sun, even sooner than that. It
Yes.
will eventually crystallize with the clear coat, and then you can't even get it off. We had one of those where parts of it came off and the other parts wouldn't. There are a variety of removal techniques. There's chemical, there's steam, there's the heat gun, and various techniques to take it off. But it becomes extremely difficult to remove if you let it age. We just did an Arctic White. Arctic White early PPF yellowed, and it's very noticeable on an Arctic White Roadster because you have, a nice white, bluish white on one side and then a yellowing on the other. All right, TikTok, Maurice Diaz says, I just got to Germany on assignment with the Department of Defense. Problem here is that modern are different.
The modem is different.
Oh, modem.
So
Okay.
so she has no navigation.
No Tesla charging maps.
Mm-hmm.
For U.S. specs Tesla models in Europe. Any idea how to address this? Just asking, as no one is helping us figure. I could ask. Wow, Maurice. I'm surprised that the Tesla service centers aren't able to offer some guidance here.
I would think that they would be. Yeah, Jesse.
Yeah, I wasn't saying anything. It must have been my mic.
Okay. We were hoping that you had an answer for this viewer. But it seems to me there was something like this with the Israeli Roadster or Israel. No, I think it was an Israeli later model. Anyway, if anyone has any advice for Maurice, this is the time to offer it. We're drawing a blank. We just don't see it here.
See the Tesla in Europe, they use the CCS2 adapter, which is in the US we use the CCS1.
Mm-hmm.
But for Teslas, they use the NACS adapter here in the US, and they're not using NACS
Mm-hmm.
in Europe. And Maurice is saying that we tried going to the service center, and they just said no.
Interesting.
So this is one where you need to go to the community, and let's hear from the community, see what they have to say.
Exactly. I wish we had an answer, Maurice, but yeah, that could be frustrating. No navigation, no Tesla charging maps, and yeah, you're definitely not getting the full capabilities of your car. And I can't imagine that Tesla would be selling them in Europe with those limitations. There's something wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it seems like this person's saying they just got there on assignment with the DoD, so they probably took their car with them. It's probably an older car, different modem, in a different country. So It's
Oh,
probably not
you-
in warranty
you-
or something.
It's a U.S. spec car.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a U.S.
Yeah,
spec car.
there you go. That's the answer. Yes.
So that's the problem that we're dealing with is you've got a U.S. spec car that's over in Europe. How do you get that car to be compatible with European specs?
Right. Okay. All right. Anyone wants to chime in? We're all ears, as is Maurice. So PPF, yeah, change it and don't let it age. And you know what? You don't have to ship your car to us cross country to get your PPF removed. Any high quality detailer in your area or PPF shop is going to be competent on how to remove this. If it's here at GMC for other work, we'll certainly make that recommendation.
Yes.
But it is not going to be that expensive if you have it done locally.
Now, Dennis Pasquale is answering Maurice and has said if the challenge is moving a U.S. car to Europe, might need an SLM,
A sim, I think, is what
a,
that's
sim.
or a
supposed to
sim.
be.
Different sim in the MCU.
That's very possible because we know that you can take those with the MCUs and put different sims in. And then Maurice says they'll sell the modem, but they won't program it.
Ah, okay. Some sort of a liability limitation there, it sounds like. Well, this is all news to us. Yeah, we wish you the best, Maurice.
And we'll keep our ears open for what we hear from the community as well.
Right. The have an update on the Florida Roadster. If you remember the Fort Lauderdale Roadster that was stolen at the service center, there are things in play right now. There's some insurance involvement, and there is a possibility that Tesla will be buying this Roadster back. So that would solve all the problems, it seems, at least for the owner.
That would at this point. If I remember right, the owner was talking about potentially wanting to sell it anyway. That would be the right thing to do.
Yep. All right, we've got one other image to pop up here. VIN 920, Jesse, Canada. As these Roadsters go up for sale on our Roadster matchmaking site, we encourage owners to add pictures, especially if they're somewhat weak in the first go-around. And this particular customer did. This is a Obsidian Black Roadster with 12,000 miles on the odometer. It's in Canada, Mississauga, Ontario, VIN 920. And it is the asking on it is $95,000. Anyway, if you're interested, there are a batch of new pictures out there currently on the Roadster matchmaking site, and you can't miss it. I think it's the first one. The cars are listed in order of entry, and this is one of the last ones that was entered.
Well, the way that picture looks, almost like they have a trailer hooked up to that Roadster.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
It looks almost.
All right. Well, we're coming to the close of the Tesla Roadster podcast. Again, we thoroughly enjoy everyone joining us, the comments, the inputs, and your feedback. As we pointed out at the beginning of this podcast, we find that a lot of people watch these after they were broadcast live. If those of you that did that after have any questions, you can email those to ev@gruber.com or any suggestions or ideas for topics you want us to cover or news items.
And specifically for the question that Maurice has, if you can't find Maurice's contact information on the Tesla Roadster Owners Facebook group, email us at ev@gruber.com and we'll help make sure that it gets onto our next podcast. The last comments that we have are from Maurice, who says the frequency for LTE is different in Europe than it is the US. And then Dennis had replied already, saying the Eastern European Tesla community has lots of experience with North American Tesla integrations into their market.
Good point. I think it was Tesla that was telling me a couple of weeks ago, we're really surprised by the number of Teslas that end up in Ukraine.
Yeah.
So, well, again, thank you for joining us. We'll keep you updated, and we'll see you next week.
Take care.